Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today. My name is Roxanne Coulterman. I am the Contracts Coordinator for the Texas Lottery Commission, and this is the pre-proposal conference for the Advertising Media Services RFP number 362-2023-0002. On the panel today, we have Tammy Williams, our Contract Specialist, Eric Williams, our Hub Coordinator, Lee Gary, Senior Contracts Attorney, Ryan Mendel, Deputy Executive Director, and Heidi Moreno. She is our Advertising and Promotions Manager. Now, if you have not done so already, please scan the QR code with a mobile device or use the link that was provided to sign in. A copy of the sign-in sheet will be posted on the Electronic State Business Daily, which is also known as the ESBD, and the Texas Lottery website prior to the end of the next business day. This is for sharing of information between prime vendors and subcontractors. Communication will be primarily through the ESBD and the Texas Lottery's website. Emails will also be used for the RFP. We strongly advise you to check with your IT department to ensure that our emails will not be filtered away. Some businesses block the phrase lottery, so you won't be able to receive emails from the Texas Lottery Commission if the filter does not allow it to come through. This conference is being recorded. If you have any questions, please submit your questions in the Q&A feature throughout the conference, and we will answer in the order received during the question and answer session at the end of each part. Our contract specialist, Tammy, will be monitoring the Q&As. We will review the recording after the conference and reinstate the questions and answers in the Q&A document, which will be released in accordance with the schedule of events. We will give our best response to your questions today. However, any questions we cannot answer today will be answered in writing and included in the Q&A document. Please note the written Q&A document is our final answer. Following this conference, if you think of additional questions, you have an opportunity to submit these in writing. These are your opportunities to ask questions, and we encourage you to do so regarding the requirements of the RFP. If you are unsure of the language written in the RFP or need further clarification, this is your chance to receive the information you need. After proposals are received, it is then the Texas Lottery's time to ask questions and/or seek clarification if needed. Please note that any oral communication that would alter or amend the RFP as written is not binding. Any and all changes or modification to the RFP will be made in writing and posted on the ESBD and the Texas Lottery's website. You are encouraged to check these websites throughout this process and once more before submitting a proposal. Please note that there may be several RFPs posted on the Texas Lottery's website at one time, so be sure that you're reviewing the correct RFP for updates. This RFP is open to any and all vendors who perform the services. To submit a proposal, you do not have to be registered on the centralized master's bidders list, be Hub certified, nor is there any approved vendor list. The Texas Lottery is considering this RFP a reissue of RFP number 362-2022-0003 that was issued last year. Therefore, in order to protect the fairness and integrity of the ongoing procurement process and promote competition, the Texas Lottery is claiming an exemption under the Texas Public Information Act at Texas Government Code 552.104 for the information provided in response to RFP 362-2022-0003 as confidential and not subject to disclosure. If you previously submitted a proposal, it will not be reviewed or considered under this new RFP 362-2023-0002 as the 2022 RFP has been closed. This procurement process is a new start for the RFP and proposers. Proposers need to ensure that they are thoroughly responding to all the information in the new RFP number 362-2023-0002 and not relying on any information provided or received under the prior RFP. Now, with that said, we will now briefly review the RFP by parts. While we may discuss only certain sections or provision of the RFP during this conference, all sections and provision of the RFP are important, and you should read and understand the entire RFP before submitting your proposal. Again, you'll have an opportunity after each part to ask general questions. So let's begin with Part 1, General Information. Section 1.4, Schedule of Events. This section includes critical dates for this procurement. If there are any changes to these dates up to the deadline of proposal, an amendment will be posted on the SBD and the Texas Lottery website. Section 1.7. Because we are a state agency, proposals are subject to the Public Information Act. During the procurement process, we will not release any information contained in your proposal. However, after a contract is awarded, your entire proposal is subject to this act and is considered public information. If there is any information in your proposal that is considered confidential or exempt from disclosure under the Texas Public Information Act, you must mark it as confidential. Examples of confidential information may be financial information or information that you consider trade secret or proprietary. It is important that you mark every applicable page and/or section that you consider confidential. If possible, mark which exception of the Texas Public Information Act it falls under. The Public Information Act is located under Texas Government Code Chapter 552. Please do not mark your entire proposal confidential. On the Office of Attorney General's website is the Public Information Act Handbook, which lists all the exceptions. If you have information that you consider confidential, respond to Section 1.7 and list the information, including a brief commentary or justification, in addition to marking individual page and sections. Tammy, are there any questions for part 1?
Hi, Roxanne. We have several questions related to Section 5. We're going to hold off on asking those questions until Eric reviews that section. We also have a question regarding Section 8. We're going to hold off on publishing and asking that question until we get to Section 8. We also have a notice that the link is not currently accepting responses. The Texas Lottery is currently working on getting that fixed. And we will notify you when it has been corrected.
Okay, thank you. So I will now jump into part 2, proposal process. As stated in section 2.1, I am the sole point of contact for this RFP. All questions should be directed to me, including any Hub questions. Section 2.4, questions shall be submitted via email by the deadline in the schedule of events. Questions submitted after the deadline in the schedule of events will not be answered, and responses will be posted on the website. Section 2.5, submission of proposals. Proposals shall be submitted in the format subscribed in this section. Section 2.5.1, proposals must be delivered to the address provided in section 2.1 and receive no later than the deadline established in the schedule of events. Late proposals will not be considered, and there's no exception that will be made. Section 2.5.2, the Texas Lottery has moved. The location it has moved to is 1801 North Congress Avenue, and it is in the George H.W. Bush State Office Building, which is a secure building, and all visitors must check in at the front desk. If you are hand delivering a proposal, please allow adequate time to check in and for a Texas Lottery staff to retrieve your proposal timely prior to the submission time listed in the schedule of events. Section 2.53, you need to submit one signed original and 7 copies of your proposal. The original proposal should be clearly marked as original and should be bound in a 3-ring binder. The Hub Subcontracting Plan should also consist of 1 signed original and 2 copies. The signed original cost proposal should be contained in a separately sealed envelope as an attachment to the original proposal. Now be sure that your proposal contains responses to all sections and parts of the RFP, and be sure that your proposal numbering corresponds with that of the RFP. You may provide a blanket acknowledgement and acceptance for parts 1, 2, and 3 unless a section requires a specific detailed answer. For parts 4, 6, 7, and 8 requires a section-by-section response. That means for our 4.1, we're looking for a 4.1 in your response that corresponds to the RFP. For part 5, complete and submit 1 original and 2 copies of the HSP. This can be in a separate 3-ring binder or folder. For the original signed cost proposal, This should be in a separately sealed envelope clearly marked as such as an attachment to the original proposal. If proposers feel a section does not need a detailed response, then it is acceptable to state that you agree and will comply. Section 2.5.6, the proposer's commitment, Attachment A, and the background information certification, Attachment D1, must be signed by an officer or agent of proposer with the authority to contractually bind the proposer, and the original attachment must be included in the original proposal. Section 2.5.9, in addition to the printed proposal, you are required to submit an electronic copy on a USB drive in an unprotected, searchable PDF file. Please do not include costs. Section 2.5.10, please note that copyrighted proposals are unacceptable and may be rejected. Section 2.6, response format and contents. This covers the format and contents of which your proposal must be organized, which includes the following: letter of transmittal, executive summary, either a blanket acknowledgement of parts 1, 2, and 3, or a section-by-section response to parts 1, 2, and 3, section-by-section response to parts 4, 6, 7, and 8, see section 2.5.3, sealed cost proposal that is attached to the original proposal only, Attachment A, proposer's commitment, Attachment D1, background information certification. Section 2.7, letter of transmittal. This must state that the proposal is valid for 180 days and provide an overview of why your company is most qualified, and include a statement accepting the terms and conditions in Part 3 and/or exceptions to such. Section 2.8, executive summary. This should be a full complete summary and not exceed 5 pages. Section 2.10, cost proposal. A proposer's cost proposal. The cost proposal must be in a format included in Attachment H in a separately sealed envelope as an attachment to the original proposal. We only need the one signed original. Disclosure of costs in the body of the written proposal is cause for disqualification. Proposers must sign the cost proposal. The sealed envelope should only contain the cost proposal. Do not include any marketing material or other materials in your sealed cost proposal. The sealed cost proposal is not open or viewed until after the proposal is scored on its technical merit. Therefore, any additional materials that are included in the sealed envelope will not be evaluated. Section 2.11. Proposers must submit only one, proposers may only submit one proposal and one cost proposal. Section 2.12, changes, modification, and cancellation. Any RFP changes, modification, or cancellation will be posted on the SBD and the Texas Lottery's website. Section 2.15, proposals evaluation. Scoring matrix is attachment G and will be used for evaluation for proposals in response to this RFP. Please note there are 2 pass-fail categories, HSP and financial analysis. Your proposal essentially goes through 4 phases once it's submitted. 1, initial assessment for compliance and completeness. 2, it is reviewed for financial and HSP analysis. 3, it is reviewed and evaluated for its technical merit. And 4, the cost proposal is open and reviewed. If at any given time your proposal is disqualified, you'll receive a notice stating such. That concludes Part 2. Tammy, are there any questions for Part 2?
Roxanne, yes, we do have a question, but first, the sign-in sheet, I understand, is now working, so if anybody has not signed in, please do so. So the question is, when you say original, does that mean we need to manually sign?
I can answer it, Roxanne. This is Angela. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it sounds like somebody may want to be using a PDF type signature or an electronic signature. And I believe that would be acceptable as long as that originated from an original signature. So the original proposal should either be signed in ink or should be an original signature that a signature that originated from an E-type signature. Those are acceptable. Important thing is that it's signed by the appropriate party.
And there are no more questions.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Angela. So I will now go over part 3. Part 3 is contractual terms and conditions. This part describes the terms and conditions which apply to the procurement process and which will become part of the contract executed pursuant to this RFP. Please read over the entire RFP document to ensure that you fully understand and will comply with all provisions. Any exceptions to the RFP should be clearly stated in the letter of transmittal, providing specific and detailed reasons for each exception, together with suggested alternative language. The contract resulting from the RFP will incorporate the RFP, any amendments, the questions and response, and the contractor's proposal and the cost proposal. Please note, a performance bond is required under Section 3.35 for the contract resulting from the RFP and is required under the State Lottery Act. Therefore, we cannot accept alternatives. Under Section 3.56.1, the contractor may be required to take the Texas Lottery's cyber training program and sign its information security agreement. In addition, Section 3.56.2, Cloud Computing, and Section 3.56.3, Data Protection, are recently new laws that have passed. If you believe you are using or will be using cloud services to perform any services of the RFP, you may need to be TexRAMP certified. Are there any questions for Part 3, Tammy?
Yes, Roxanne, there is a question. The question reads, for parts 1, 2, and 3, do we have to include all copy contents from the RFP in our blanket acceptance? Or is a single page for each part with our blanket acceptance okay?
So this is Angela again. So you can do this 2 different ways. In your letter of transmittal, you can have a statement that says we blanket accept parts 1, 2, and 3, and we're looking for it in that letter. So be sure to put it in that letter. You may also add a tab or page for parts 1, 2, and 3 and say the same thing. But you need to state any acceptance to the terms and conditions in the letter of transmittal itself.
And there are no more questions.
Okay. Thank you, Tammy, and thank you, Angela. I will now go over Part 4, Required Information. Section 4.1 through 4.3. Although these sections seem brief in the RFP, these sections require proposers to gather, compile, and submit a great deal of detailed documentation. Please read these sections thoroughly and provide all the information in your section-by-section response. Section 4.4, Conflict of Interest. In this section, you are asked to disclose any actual, potential, or perceived conflict of interest. Please review this section and make any disclosures. Section 4.5, Financial Soundness. The Texas Lottery Commission does a thorough financial analysis of all proposals. Please provide the information requested under this section. If you feel this information is confidential, please mark it as such. This is a pass-fail category on the scoring matrix. It is critical that you provide the requested information. Section 4.6, Background Investigation. The Texas Lottery Commission reserves the right to conduct an in-depth background investigation on the apparent successful proposer. Section 4.6.2, a background investigation may include on contractual defined vendor principal, those who will be directly involved in selling or leasing the goods or performing the services subject to this RFP or resulting contract. This includes partners, shareholders, officers, and directors who are directly involved. Section 4.6.3, background investigations may conduct on vendors' employees who meet one or more of the criteria under this section. This contract requires a background investigation of employees on site at the Texas Lottery Commission. Background investigation will include fingerprinting. The apparent successful proposer may be required to complete All forms included in the attachment E of the RFP by the described time after the written announcement of the parent successful proposer by the Texas Lottery. If you feel that the information you are providing in attachment E is confidential, please mark it as such. As mentioned before, we ask that all proposers complete and submit attachment D1 with its proposal. This is a certification that your company would not be denied a sales agent license under Texas Government Code 466.155, which is attachment D in the RFP. Section 4.7, disclosure of interested parties. If requested, the successful proposer will be required to fill out a 1295 form with the Texas Ethics Commission. That concludes part 4. Tammy, are there any questions for part 4?
There are no questions for part 4.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Williams. He is our Hub coordinator, and he will be going over part 5. Eric?
Thank you, Roxanne. Good afternoon. My name is Eric Williams, and I'm the Hub coordinator for the Lottery Commission. I'll be covering a very crucial element of your proposal, the Hub Subcontracting Plan, or HSP. If you're not the individual responsible for preparing the HSP, please pass this information to them and recommend they watch the video of this pre-proposal conference, which will be posted on the agency website. The Hub Subcontracting Plan is used to identify both Hub and non-Hub subcontractors that will be utilized under the awarded contract. All proposers, Hub and non-Hub, submitting a response to this RFP are required to submit an HSP. No one is exempt. As Roxanne previously mentioned, the HSP is a pass-fail element of this RFP. No evaluation points are given for the HSP, and proposers must submit an HSP with their proposal regardless of their subcontracting intentions. Any proposal received, not including an HSP, will be rejected, and the technical portion will not be evaluated. So it's important to submit a completed HSP with your proposal. Also, during the reviewing process, if it is determined that your submitted HSP has failed, your proposal will be disqualified and will not be evaluated. The HSP process is governed by rules established by the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. Per Section 5.1 of the RFP, you are responsible for reviewing this rule. The definition of a subcontractor is very broad and applies to any third-party vendor used to fulfill a portion of the contract. Our definition of a subcontractor is a person who contracts with a successful proposer to work, to supply commodities, or contribute toward completing work for the Texas Lottery. In other words, if the successful proposer who is awarded this contract is paying anyone who is not an employee to provide goods and/or services, they are very likely subcontracting under this definition. These individuals will receive a 1099, unlike your employees who receive a W-2. A proposer that indicates that their company will be subcontracting, a proposer who indicates that their company will not be subcontracting any portion of the contract will be fulfilling the entire contract with their own resources, including its own equipment, supplies, materials, and/or employees, will be self-performing. Keep in mind that a pre-existing subcontracting relationship is considered subcontracting, in which case you cannot claim self-performance. A pre-existing subcontracting relationship is a business affiliation your company has with a third-party vendor who is currently supplying your company with goods and/or services and will continue to supply those goods and/or services to assist you in the performance of this contract. If you determine that your company is capable of fulfilling the entire contract with your own equipment, supplies, materials, and/or employees, please check the appropriate box in Section 2, the respondent subcontracting intentions on the HSP form. Complete Section 3, self-performing justification by providing a thorough explanation of how your company will perform the entire contract with its own employees, supplies, materials, and/or equipment as it relates to Part 7 of the RFP, the scope of services. Complete Section 4 of the HSP form, the affirmation prior to submitting your HSP with your proposal. If you are not self-performing and you intend to subcontract any portion of the contract, you will need to proceed with the good faith effort of the HSP. In Section 5.5.1 of the RFP, we have identified specific areas where Hub subcontracting opportunities do not exist, and therefore they are not listed under Section 5.5.2 as potential subcontracting opportunities under this contract. These areas include broadcast, newspaper, digital, social, out-of-home media, and sponsorship activation vendors. In Section 5.5.2 of the RFP, we have identified potential Hub subcontracting opportunities, which may or may not be subcontracted depending upon the proposal's existing resources, employees, and business model. You are not limited to this list in the RFP. However, if you intend to subcontract any portion of the contract and it's not listed, you are responsible for identifying it in your HSP submission. We have included in the RFP a list of Hub vendors by CMBL class and commodity description for the areas included in Section 5.5.2 to assist you in finding potential Hub vendors. The Lottery Commission does not endorse, recommend, or attest to the capabilities of any company or individual listed within the RFP or on the CMBL Hub search directory. The good faith effort methods are for those proposers who intend to subcontract any portion of the contract. The goal of this good faith effort is to actively involve hubs in the Texas procurement process and ensure they receive a fair share of state business. Please check the appropriate boxes in Section 2, the respondent subcontracting intentions of the HSP form, and perform one of the 3 good faith effort methods. The optional quick checklist will assist you in determining which of the 3 methods you should use. Good faith effort method A has 2 options. Method A, option 1. This option is for the proposer who will use only Texas certified hubs for all subcontracting opportunities listed in Section 2B, the respondent subcontracting intentions on the HSP form. If you use this method, please verify online that the hub vendor is still an active hub listed on the CMBL. Method A, option 2, meeting the specified hub contract goal. This option is for the proposer who will use a combination of non-hubs and Texas certified hubs and intend to meet the 24.30% goal. However, to meet the specified hub contract goal of 24.30%, the proposer can only count those hubs with which you have contracted with for 5 years or less. If you're going to subcontract and cannot claim method A1 or A2, then you must submit your HSP using method B, which is the good faith effort outreach. And this is done by notifying at least 3 Texas certified hubs per subcontracting opportunity, providing those hubs at least 7 working days to respond, excluding the date the solicitation was mailed, emailed, or faxed to the hub vendors, weekends, holidays, and any other day the executive director has closed the agency. Also providing scope of work for hubs to determine whether they are interested. Providing a location where the specifications are located, i.e. linked to the posting on the ESBD or a physical location in your building. Information regarding insurance and bonding requirements, if applicable. And in addition, notifying a minimum of 2 minority women trade organizations and/or business development centers providing the same information as well as the same time frame for response. A mentor may utilize a protege for a state agency-sponsored mentor-protege agreement for the subcontracting if the protege is able to provide services. The mentor-protege relationship may be utilized in lieu of additional solicitation to hubs. Proposers using this method must perform outreach even for areas where a proposer has a pre-existing or exclusive subcontracting relationship that will be used in performance of this contract. Our evaluation process for proposals received on or before the deadline for proposals is to review and evaluate the HSP and all supporting documents to determine if the HSP has passed or failed. During our review, we may request clarification of information or representation in your submitted HSP. Again, there are no evaluation points assigned to the HSP. It is strictly pass or fail element. If it is determined that your HSP has failed, the technical portion of your proposal will not be evaluated. Following the award of the contract, any proposed changes to the HSP must be submitted for review and approved by the agency. A written change approval form will be provided by the Texas Lottery Commission. Subcontracting without prior authorization is a breach of contract. Monthly subcontracting expenditure reports are required as condition of payment. Also, the successful proposer must provide written notification to each subcontractor informing them of their selection. A copy of this notice will be provided to the TLC no later than 10 working days after contract award, as stated in section 5.6.1. The notice must specify at a minimum the contracting agency's name and its point of contact for the contract award number, the subcontracting opportunity to be performed, the appropriate dollar value of the subcontracting opportunity, and the expected percentage of the total contract that the subcontracting opportunity represents. To assist you with the HSP, the Lottery Commission provides the following resources and assistance. All vendors are strongly encouraged to take advantage of all the resources. This pre-proposal conference video will be posted on the agency website. A copy of the TLC's pre-bid proposal conference booklet regarding HSP requirements is available on the agency's website. The HSP quick checklist is included in the RFP. All proposers have the opportunity to submit written HSP questions up until the date of your proposal submission. However, we suggest you submit questions early to allow yourself the necessary time to cure any deficiencies with your plan. You are encouraged to start working on your plan right away to give yourself plenty of time. The HSP Q&A is posted on the TLC website and the ESBD, which will be a rolling document. So be sure to check the date posted. We will review drafts of your HSP to identify deficiencies and provide feedback. However, we will not state whether your draft has passed or failed. We will provide one-on-one workshops upon request. These may be conducted via Zoom, Teams, or telephone conference. The purpose of the workshop is to discuss the Hub subcontracting requirements, answering questions specific to conducting a good faith effort and completing the HSP forms. This process will allow you the opportunity to submit your HSP forms for review by the Lottery Commission prior to the proposal deadline. However, this process does not guarantee that the HSP submitted with the proposal will pass. It is the proposal's responsibility to understand the requirements of the HSP and to perform all the required steps prior to submitting the HSP. The last date to review any draft HSPs for deficiencies and one-on-one workshops is listed in section 1.4 of the RFP. As per section 2.1 of the RFP, please forward all questions or requests to Roxanne. Again, we strongly encourage you to take full advantage of all the available resources to assist you with your HSP submission. Once you submit your HSP with the proposal, there is no opportunity to cure. Please consult the schedule of events to make sure that you know which dates are critical in terms of preparing and submitting the HSP. In closing, I would like to remind you, again, if you are not the person who is responsible for completing the HSP, please pass this information to them, as well as let them know that today's pre-proposal conference will be available for review on the agency's website. Please submit questions regarding the HSP after this conference in writing, and they will be answered and posted on the agency website and the ESBD. HSP questions can be submitted up until the deadline for proposals, which is listed in section 1.4 of the RFP. Tammy, are there any questions for section 5? And prior to that, we received questions written questions early in the week, and we will answer those questions and post those on the agency's website. So Tammy, are there any additional questions? Part 5.
Eric, we do have several questions on part 5. These questions are the same questions that the agency received in writing that you just spoke about. So we are not going to answer these questions in today's pre-proposal conference. These questions will be answered in the Q&A document that you said would be released soon. And then there are no further questions.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. And at this time, I will turn it over to our Deputy Executive Director, Ryan Mendel, and our Advertising and Promotion Manager, Heidi Moreno, for the scope of services. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the scope of the contract and what it looks like this time. I want to make sure that anyone that has considered doing business with the past or kind of had some understanding about the contract in the past understood the changes here. And the biggest difference is that this, the scope of this contract is really focused on the media planning and buying. The RFPs that we've previously done that have resulted in contracts had a much different and larger scope that involved creative services and other aspects. So I just want to make sure that everyone carefully reads through sections 6, 7, and 8. They make sure that they are attuned to exactly what we're asking for. The other point, and it's obviously a related point, is that the contract, this contract budget is really set almost directly by the legislature. And so, we have gone through, significant budget cuts over previous sessions. We don't know what the future will hold, but we know where we are today. That's what we have set forth as far as the budget and the scope of the services on there. So again, I just want to make sure that everyone carefully reads through that, understands what we're asking for today and going forward. And that's all I had to say. So with that, I'll turn it over to Heidi for some more detail.
Thank you, Ryan. Good afternoon. My name is Heidi Moreno, and I'm the Advertising and Promotions Manager. I will be reviewing some areas in Section 6 through 8. Section 6, Advertising Agency Staffing Requirements. Section 6.1.2. Proposers must provide an organizational chart which identifies all staff, including media planning and/or media buying subcontractor personnel who will support the Texas Lottery account. Please see Section 6.2 for agency staff structure. Section 7, Scope of Services. 7.4, Budget. The level of anticipated annual fiscal year spending will be determined by the Texas Lottery. The budget for fiscal year 23 is $10 million. If the annual budget was to exceed $11 million, the cost proposal, attachment H, allows for lower commission percentages based on each successive increase in billing amounts. 7.6.4, Trafficking of Media. The successful proposer shall be responsible for the trafficking of all creative assets to media and out-of-home production vendors. The Texas Lottery will provide all creative assets. 7.8, Out-of-home production. Permanent jackpot billboards. These are the billboards you see across the state that advertise the Mega Millions and Powerball jackpots. The successful proposer shall be responsible for negotiating and contracting new and replacement out-of-home billboard assets, including but not limited to vinyls, jackpot number replacement, or repair. 7.12.2 Agency fee. Each estimate will include a line item for agency fees based on the projected expenditure of the job and the commission percentage. This applies to any estimates related to any pre-existing media commitments the successful proposer will take over. 7.13.6 Agency fees will be billed with each invoice after invoice reconciliation at an actualized amount based on the actual expenditure of the job and the commission percentage. Section 8, media response. 8.1.4, the assignment. This is an assignment for each proposer as part of its proposal. This is not the final FY24 media plan, only an assignment. In the assignment, there are two required annual media commitments. Number 1, permanent jackpot billboards. The Texas Lottery looks to enter into a 2-year deal with 95 permanent jackpot billboards across the state. For fiscal year 23, this dollar commitment is approximately $5.7 million. Please see the exact dollar amount in the RFP. Number 2 is newspaper. Public notice of game closings run in approximately 70 newspapers across the state. These insertions run monthly and are negotiated annually. For fiscal year 23, this dollar commitment is $135,000. Budget. The budget shall include all media costs and shall not exceed $10 million. Agency fees shall not be included in this assignment. Please follow the media plan criteria in section 8. This concludes my review. Passing it back to Roxanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Eric, for your part. So I just want to follow up for parts 6, 7, and 8. This does require a section-by-section response. This will be your opportunity to tell us how you'll perform the services described in each section. It's not enough to say that you can do something. Tell us how you will do it and provide examples of techniques that you've used for success. Proposers need to demonstrate their ability to do the work requested. Tammy, are there any questions for part 6, 7, or 8?
Yes, Roxanne, there is a question. So section 8.1.4C, by the budget shall not exceed 10 million and should only include all media cost. In section 8.1.4C, please confirm that a media budget for plan in proposer's response should be the full 10 million. B, agency fees will be covered under a separate budget, not explicitly called out in the RFP, i.e. agency fees shall not be included in this assignment. C, any other necessary non-working cost, i.e. jackpot vinyl replacement or campaign vinyl production cost, will also be covered under a separate budget, not explicitly called out in the RFP. D, would any experiential contract payment be covered under a separate PO budget? Without knowing what opportunities would or would not be considered by the Texas Lottery in 2023, how would a proposer know how to estimate for those costs to be managed?
Okay, I think this question might be for Heidi or Ryan.
I'll go ahead and I'll try and answer some of it, but please look in the Q&A for specifically. So section 8.1.4 is only an assignment. It is not the actual media plan for FY24. So again, please make sure you're following the criteria that's laid out in section 6. But because this is an assignment, agency fees are not included, and that is correct. Again, production costs are not included in this. The 10 million should be all media costs. I'm reading your question. It's a lengthy one. And like Ryan had stated, we still do not know what our budget will be for FY24. The Texas legislature is the one that sets our budget. So at this time, I really cannot speak to any additional expenditures. But like I said, look in the Q&A for our written response to this question.
Heidi's exactly right. And I would just to make it even, very, very clear here, the 8.1.4 assignment is just for purposes of the RFP. That's so we can assess, a proposed plan and evaluate it from there. There will be, a separate plan that will have, we'll have all the details, working with the successful proposer about what will go into that. But the 8.1.4 is if you had $10 million and you were, creating a media buying plan, what would that be, so that we can assess that for purposes of the RFP.
Okay, so the next question is, so can you confirm what should we use as the base budget to meet 24.30% for the HSP?
I think, is that a Hub question? Sounds like it's.
Eric, do you want to take it or you want me to take it?
I think that was one of the questions that was presented to us previous. And we will address that question. That was one of the written questions, so we will address that within the next few days.
Okay. And the last question, will the selected vendor be responsible for executing the 2023 media plan that is included?
No. The current FY20 media plan is what's happening today because we are now in fiscal year 23. The successful proposer would need to be responsible for FY24.
And there are no more questions.
Okay, well, thank you, Tammy, and thank you for everyone that responded. We are towards the end of our conference. Please submit any other questions in the Q&A feature, or you can submit questions in accordance with the schedule of events. So here are some final reminders. All scope of services questions must be submitted in writing via email to me by the deadline in the schedule of events. Scope of services questions that are not submitted in writing by the time and date specified will not be answered. If you have a question on the RFP process, you can contact me and I may be able to respond. Generally, this is the case for all sections except for parts 6, 7, and 8, but do not hesitate to ask. Please make note of all dates in the schedule of events. Proposers are responsible for checking the ESBD and the TLC website for any and all notices, amendments, and Q&A regarding this RFP. We will not directly email these to you. Emails are used after proposals are submitted for any direct communication. Prior to the submission of your proposal, please review the entire RFP carefully to ensure that you submit all required information and documentation. So the pre-proposal conference video and sign-in sheet will be on the websites prior to the end of the next business days. So before we go, Tammy, I'm going to make one more round to you. Is there any other questions?
Yes, Roxanne, there is one more question. Can you please explain why the scoring matrix has changed pretty significantly?
I'll take this one. This is Angela again. So scoring matrices are set by the evaluation committees, and evaluation committees tend to differ from RFP to RFP. So that would be why there's been a change. This is not the same RFP we released before, although it is similar, but there were some updates to it that we made. And again, the agency doesn't tend to have the same committee members on RFP to RFP.
And there are no more questions.
Okay, well, thank you, Tammy. So this concludes our conference. I hope everyone has a great evening, and thanks again for your attendance. Have a good one.